Hi everybody, it's Gordon here. I've just popped down to my local supermarket. It's huge. There's a massive array of goods that I can buy. How very different really from the times, of the corner shop, less than 50, 60 years ago really. Or even during the Second World War when there was food rationing. Of course, these days, increasingly, we don't even have to go to the shops. We can order our shopping online. The world is changing, and the world has always changed, and so writing and ideas have always developed as well over the years. Now, in your GCSE English Literature exam, you're going to be dealing with texts that are written at very different times, be it an Inspector Calls in Edwardian times, the start of the 20th century, or Macbeth back in the Elizabethan era. Maybe it would be Blood Brothers in the late 20th century, or even something like the Charles Dickens novel in Victorian times, A Christmas Carol, each with their own particular perspectives, and each reflecting and commenting on their times, and in a way are products of their times too. So you're asked to include in your answers, your essays for GCSE English Literature, something about the social, historical and cultural context. So what on earth is that, and how do you go about that? Well, maybe think about the solar system just very briefly for a moment. The solar system is comprised of many different planets, all of different sizes, different shapes in terms of their composition. Some are very rocky, some are very gaseous, full of gases. Some are quite icy, some are very hot. Some have rings around them, and some indeed move at very different speeds to other planets. They're each products of a particular set of circumstances in the universe at a moment in time. And so indeed, the texts that you're studying, the sort of ones that I mentioned already, are also products of their particular time in history as well. I recently listened to a radio play in which a young couple have bought a house that turns out to have been occupied by another younger woman in the past who had committed suicide, taken her own life. Interesting, because the play, first of all, is a modern one and deals with modern attitudes, perhaps more sympathetic in a fashion, more compassionate towards victims of suicide. When we compare that or contrast that with much harsher, less compassionate attitudes to suicide in the past. Also, of course, very different relationships there in that play between the husband and wife, very much an equal partnership. If you look, for example, at an Inspector Calls, the father figure, Mr. Burling, obviously a very dominant figure and very controlling in the hierarchy within that family. So something as simple as gender roles, there is a difference in terms of the context. Also, however, there's a little example that I could give you whereby a dog is heard barking quite regularly in the play. Now, if I was commenting on this, I might, in terms of the modern context, simply say, well, it's not that relevant. It's perhaps a sort of a minor irritant or a sign of some unease that the playwright wants to convey. However, if we were to transfer that back into plays written several hundreds of years ago, or even back in Victorian times, it might have been an indicator of some real disturbance in the natural world, or some forerunner, some omen of something really bad about to happen. So the cultural and social and historical context could be applied to that little detail in the play, and it's the little details that you need to be considering, as you prepare your answer. Just a quick word of advice: whatever you do, don't attempt to write about social, cultural, and historical context as an add-on or a bolt-on to your piece of writing, your essay. It should actually be a part of it from the very start, and should make reference throughout it. That's the best form of answer, really. Do consider, as I say, the different contexts. I mean, it might be dealing with a very rigidly structured society. Perhaps it's got quite a strict hierarchy. Maybe there's inequality in that society, or perhaps there's some significant poverty and social upheaval on the cards. that are finding their way into the writing, finding their way into the narrative, etc., or finding their way into the way the characters relate one to the other in that play. Maybe it's about the role of women and greater emancipation for them, and the writer is exploring how his or her society is edging towards that greater emancipation for women. Maybe it's even about war or violence and societies that are having to deal with that, or the aftermath or of that, perhaps, things of that nature. So each of your texts will be dealing with specifics, specific to the period in which the piece was written, specific to the writer's attitudes and ideas and outlook, and you need to be considering this and considering how that assists and enhances your understanding and appreciation of the play and or the novel, and be able to write about that accordingly. And as I say, do write about that from the get-go. Make sure it works through your play as your question as a whole, and not simply as a bolt-on at the end. I'll leave it with you for now, and I'll catch up with you soon. Bye for now.